Anna stood behind the counter of the small cafe, her hands cold even though the coffee machine hissed with steam. The early morning crowd was already filling the place, and she could feel the familiar stares. Some were impatient, others just curious. Every day felt the same. She would smile, take orders, and carry trays of coffee to people who hardly noticed her face. Some were polite, but many were not. They looked at her plain uniform, her worn-out shoes, and her tired eyes, and they judged her without a word. "Be faster next time," a man once told her after she brought his sandwich. "You're just a waitress. It's not that hard." Anna had smiled that day, but inside, it felt like a heavy stone had been dropped into her chest. No one knew her story. No one knew that just 5 years ago, she had lived in a large home with soft carpets, a garden full of flowers, and parents who loved her deeply. But life had changed. A sudden tragedy had taken everything away. She never talked about it. Instead, she worked quietly day after day just to survive. The cafe's corner table was her favorite place to rest during short breaks. She would sit there for a few minutes, sipping water and looking out the window at the busy street. The laughter of people passing by felt like it belonged to another world, one she no longer lived in. Sometimes, she wished someone would really see her, not as a server, not as a poor girl, but as a person with dreams and feelings. But that kind of thing didn't happen in real life, she thought. Until one morning. It was raining, and the cafe bell rang as the door opened. A man in a blue coat stepped inside, shaking water from his hair. He wasn't like the usual customers. His eyes scanned the room slowly, as if he noticed every detail. When his gaze met Anna's, he gave a small smile, not the quick, dismissive kind, but a warm one that made her blink in surprise. He ordered a simple cup of coffee and sat near the window. Anna served him quietly, expecting him to open a laptop or scroll through his phone like most people did. But instead, he looked outside, sipping slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. When she came to collect his empty cup, he said softly, "Thank you. You have a very kind way of serving people." It was the first compliment Anna had heard in years. She didn't know it yet, but this man would change her life in ways she could never imagine. The next morning, the cafe felt unusually quiet to Anna. The rain from yesterday had cleared, and the sun streamed through the windows, warming the wooden tables. She was wiping a counter when the bell above the door rang again. It was him, the man in the blue coat. He walked in with the same calm presence, his steps unhurried, his eyes meeting hers with a small nod. Anna felt a strange mix of curiosity and nervousness. Customers didn't usually look at her twice, but this man seemed different. He ordered the same thing as before, black coffee, no sugar. She noticed his voice was gentle, yet steady, the kind that made you want to listen. When she brought the cup to his table, he thanked her again, his tone warm and sincere. It wasn't like the automatic thanks people often gave without meaning it. He truly meant it. That day, he stayed longer. He read a newspaper, sometimes glancing out the window, sometimes watching the cafe with quiet interest. Anna found herself wondering who he was. He didn't dress like a rich man, yet his coat looked expensive, and the way he carried himself hinted at confidence and success. Her coworker, Lily, noticed her glancing at him. "Careful, Anna," Lily whispered with a smirk. "Men like that never notice girls like us. Don't waste your time." Anna laughed it off, but the words stung. She didn't have time for dreams anyway. She needed to focus on her job. Still, when the man finished his coffee and walked toward the door, he paused. Turning back, he caught Anna's eye and said, "See you tomorrow." She froze. Was that a promise? Or just something people said? The following days became a quiet pattern. Every morning, at almost the same time, he came in, ordered his coffee, and sat by the window. Sometimes he read. Sometimes he simply sat and thought. But always, he greeted Anna with that same warm smile. She began to notice small details about him. How he seemed to treat everyone politely, even when the cafe was noisy and crowded. How his eyes softened when she brought his order. How he always left a tip that was more than the price of the coffee. One afternoon, as Anna cleared his table, she found a folded piece of paper under the cup. Her heart raced as she opened it. It wasn't a note with words, just a simple drawing of a coffee cup, steam curling up into the shape of a heart. She didn't know what it meant, but for the first time in years, she went home with a smile she couldn't hide. She had no idea that this man was not just another customer, but someone who was watching her for a very important reason. The mornings felt brighter now. Anna found herself looking forward to the moment the cafe door opened and the man in the blue coat stepped in. It wasn't love, not yet, but his presence felt like a calm breeze in her busy, tiring days. One Tuesday, the cafe was unusually crowded. A group of noisy office workers took up half the space, clicking their fingers impatiently and demanding faster service. Anna hurried from table to table, balancing trays, refilling cups, and forcing polite smiles. She didn't notice she had spilled a few drops of coffee on her apron until a voice spoke beside her. "You're working too hard," the man in the blue coat said softly. She looked at him in surprise. "It's my job," she replied, her voice barely above the hum of the cafe. "I know," he said with a small smile. "But even the hardest workers deserve a moment to breathe." He reached into his pocket and handed her a small, neatly wrapped chocolate bar. "For when you get a break." Anna hesitated and used a kindness from strangers, but something in his eyes told her it was safe to accept. She tucked the chocolate into her apron pocket, feeling oddly touched. That day, he stayed even longer than usual. Between serving tables, Anna noticed him watching the room with quiet observation, as though he was studying not just her, but the way others treated her. Near closing time, one of the office workers, the kind who never tipped, accidentally knocked over his coffee, splashing hot liquid across the table. Instead of apologizing, he blamed Anna for serving it too close to the edge. Before she could respond, the man in the blue coat stood up. His voice was calm but firm. "Blaming the waitress for your clumsiness doesn't make you right," he said, his eyes steady on the man. "You owe her an apology." The entire cafe went quiet. The office worker grumbled, but muttered a half-hearted sorry before leaving. Anna stood frozen, shocked that someone had spoken up for her. When she brought his bill, she whispered, "Thank you." He only smiled and said, "See you tomorrow." That night, as Anna lay in bed, she thought about the way he had defended her without hesitation. No one had done that for her in years. But she still didn't know his name. What she didn't realize was that the man in the blue coat wasn't just being kind, he was testing her character. And soon, his reason for being in that cafe every day would change her life forever. The next morning, Anna arrived at the cafe early. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air as she tied her apron and arranged cups on the counter. She didn't want to admit it, but part of her excitement for work came from knowing the man in the blue coat would show up. And he did, right on time, just as the clock struck 9. This time, though, he wasn't alone. Another man, dressed in a sharp black suit, walked in with him. The suited man looked important, carrying a leather folder under his arm. Anna's curiosity grew, but she kept her head down, serving them their usual orders. They spoke quietly, leaning close as if discussing something serious. From where she stood, Anna caught bits of their conversation, words like meeting, contracts, and board approval. It didn't sound like the talk of ordinary customers. When Anna brought their bill, the suited man smiled politely. "You're Anna, right?" he asked. She nodded, unsure how he knew her name. The man in the blue coat chuckled softly. "I talk about you sometimes," he said. "Good things, of course." Her cheeks warmed, but she didn't know what to say. The suited man extended his hand. "It's nice to meet you. I'm Daniel's assistant." Anna blinked. Daniel. She finally had a name for the man she had been thinking about for weeks. It sounded simple, yet carried a quiet strength, just like him. They left shortly after, but not before Daniel turned to her and said, "You should keep Saturday evening free." Her heart skipped. "Why?" she asked. "You'll see," he replied, smiling as he walked out the door. For the rest of the day, Anna could barely focus. Saturday was only 3 days away, and she had no idea what it meant. She tried to imagine possible scenarios. Maybe he just wanted to thank her for good service, or maybe he needed her help with something. But deep down, a small, nervous voice whispered another possibility. Perhaps this was something far bigger than she imagined. That night, she stood in front of her small mirror, brushing her hair and wondering what she would wear. She hadn't been anywhere special in years. Her wardrobe was full of work uniforms and a few old dresses that had lost their shine. Still, the thought of Saturday kept her smiling. Anna didn't know it yet, but that dinner would be the night her life began to change forever, and also the night she would learn who Daniel really was. Saturday arrived faster than Anna expected. All week, her mind had been busy with questions. Why had Daniel told her to keep the evening free? Why didn't he explain further? She had considered asking him when he came to the cafe, but somehow, she didn't want to spoil the mystery. By evening, she had chosen her best dress, a soft blue one she had owned for years but rarely wore. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and pressed. She brushed her hair until it shone and put on a little lip gloss, hoping it would be enough. At exactly 6 o'clock, there was a knock on her small apartment door. Anna opened it to find a sleek black car parked outside. A uniformed driver stood there, holding an envelope. "Miss Anna?" he asked. She nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He handed her the envelope. Inside was a thick, cream-colored card with gold lettering. "You are cordially invited to a private dinner at the Grand Royale, 7 p.m. Her hands trembled slightly. The Grand Royale was the most luxurious hotel in the city. She had only seen it in magazines. She had never imagined stepping inside. The driver opened the car door for her. As they drove through the city, Anna looked out at the passing lights, her heart beating faster with every mile. She thought about all the years she had been overlooked, treated as if she were invisible. Now, someone had noticed her. When they arrived, a doorman in a red uniform welcomed her inside. The marble floors gleamed and crystal chandeliers sparkled above. The air smelled faintly of roses and polished wood. A hostess led her to a private dining room. The table was set with fine china, silver cutlery, and a vase of fresh lilies. But what caught her attention most was Daniel, standing near the window, dressed in a dark suit that made him look even more striking. "You came," he said warmly, pulling out a chair for her. "Of course," she replied, trying to hide the fact that her voice was shaking. As they sat, he spoke about many things, travel, life, dreams, but never once explained the reason for the evening. Halfway through the meal, Daniel's assistant entered, placed a small black folder on the table, and left quietly. Daniel slid it toward Anna. Inside was something that made her eyes widen in disbelief. It was not just a dinner invitation. It was the beginning of a proposal that could change everything she knew about herself, her job, and her future. Anna's fingers trembled as she opened the black folder again, certain she had read it wrong the first time. But no, it was still there in bold, beautiful writing. "You are invited to be the guest of honor at the Grand Royale's annual charity gala." Beneath it was her name printed in gold, as if she were someone important. The event was just 2 weeks away, and hundreds of wealthy and powerful people would attend. She looked up at Daniel, her brows furrowed. "Why me?" she wanted to ask, but the words stuck in her throat. Daniel smiled, almost as if he could read her thoughts. "Anna, sometimes the world overlooks the ones who deserve to be seen the most," he said softly. "I think it's time you were seen." Anna swallowed hard, unsure if this was some elaborate joke or a real opportunity. She had never been invited to anything grand in her life. She had always been the one serving food to others, never the one being served. When the dinner ended, the driver took her home, but her mind was still spinning. She didn't own anything fancy enough for such an event. The idea of standing in a ballroom full of people in gowns and jewels terrified her. The next morning at the cafe, the whispers began again. One of her coworkers, Mia, smirked. "So, someone saw you getting into a black car last night. Who's your new rich boyfriend?" Anna tried to ignore her, but the teasing continued all day. They didn't know about the invitation. She wasn't even sure she wanted to tell them. People could be cruel, and she didn't want her hopes crushed before the night arrived. That weekend, an envelope appeared under her apartment door. Inside was a note from Daniel and a small card for a luxury boutique. The words on the card read, "For the dress you deserve." Her breath caught. No one had ever done something like this for her before. She almost didn't want to go. Part of her feared it was too good to be true, but another part whispered that maybe this was her moment to step out of the shadows. The following week, Anna stood in the boutique, surrounded by shimmering fabrics and glittering gowns. The shop assistant handed her a long, emerald green dress that fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. She stared at herself in the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman staring back. The dress she never thought she would wear was now hers, and the night she never thought she would live was coming closer. The night of the gala arrived, and Anna could barely breathe as she stepped out of the black luxury car. The city lights reflected off the tall glass walls of the Grand Royale, and the red carpet stretched ahead like a path to another world. Flashbulbs from cameras went off in rapid bursts, though Anna was sure they weren't for her. Men in sharp tuxedos and women in glittering gowns glided past, each seeming to belong in this world of wealth and grace. Anna clutched her small silver clutch bag, her emerald green dress flowing behind her like a gentle wave. She tried to steady her trembling hands, reminding herself that she had been invited. She belonged here tonight, even if just for this one evening. A doorman in white gloves smiled and welcomed her inside. The air was filled with the sound of soft piano music and the scent of expensive perfume. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and waiters in white uniforms moved gracefully with trays of champagne. She scanned the room and spotted Daniel near the stage, speaking to several distinguished guests. When he saw her, his face lit up. He excused himself and walked over, his eyes never leaving hers. "Anna," he said warmly, "you look perfect." Her cheeks flushed. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. Daniel offered his arm.
"Call me."
"There are people I want you to meet." As they moved through the crowd, Anna noticed curious glances in her direction. She could hear the faint murmur of voices. Who is she? She's not from around here, is she? She must be someone important if Daniel brought her. They stopped at a table near the stage, the very center of the ballroom, where the most influential guests sat. Daniel pulled out a chair for her, and she sat down, feeling both honored and exposed. The evening unfolded like a dream. There were speeches, charity auctions, and live performances. Yet Anna's mind kept circling back to one question: why had Daniel brought her here? As the host took the stage to announce the highlight of the evening, Daniel leaned closer and whispered, "What happens next might surprise you." Anna's heart pounded. She had no idea that in a few minutes, this night would take a turn she would never forget, one that would finally reveal the truth about why she was here. The host's voice echoed through the grand ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are honored to welcome our new CEO, a man whose vision and heart will lead our company into the future, Mr. Daniel Carter." The crowd erupted into applause as Daniel stood and walked toward the stage. Anna watched in shock, her mouth slightly open. She had known he was important, but CEO? Of one of the largest companies in the city. Daniel spoke with confidence, thanking the guests for their support and outlining his hopes for the company's future. But then, his tone softened, and his eyes swept across the crowd until they found Anna. "Before we continue," Daniel said, "I want to share a story." The room grew silent. "Some months ago," he began, "I walked into a small cafe every morning. Not because of the coffee, but because of the kindness of one young woman who worked there. She treated me with respect, without knowing who I was. She never judged me, even when others did. She reminded me of the values my mother taught me: humility, hard work, and kindness." Murmurs filled the room as guests glanced around, wondering who he meant. Daniel continued, his gaze fixed on Anna. "That young woman is here tonight. Her name is Anna, and she is the reason I'm standing here, not just as a CEO, but as a man who believes in goodness above status." Anna's chest tightened. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward her. She felt the weight of their stares, but also a strange warmth rising in her. Daniel stepped down from the stage and walked back to the table. Without hesitation, he reached for her hand and gently helped her to her feet. "This woman," he said to the crowd, "is proof that greatness isn't found in wealth, but in the heart. And I want everyone to know she has a place in my life, permanently." Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Anna's knees nearly gave way. She had come tonight thinking she was just a guest, but now it felt like the entire event revolved around her. Her past as the poor waitress was dissolving before her eyes, replaced by a future she never imagined. Yet deep inside, she still wondered, why me? Why now? What Daniel said next would answer everything and leave the entire room stunned. The room was so quiet that Anna could hear her own heartbeat. Daniel still held her hand, his eyes locked on hers as if no one else existed. "I chose Anna," Daniel began, "because she saved my life." The crowd shifted uneasily. Anna's brows furrowed. She didn't remember ever saving him. Daniel's voice grew softer. "Months ago, I was in a very dark place. My father had passed away suddenly, and I had been pushed into a position I wasn't ready for. I would sit alone in my car every morning, wondering if any of this was worth it. One morning, I wandered into a small cafe just to get away from my thoughts." He smiled faintly. "That's when I saw her, Anna. She didn't know me. She didn't know my pain. But she smiled at me like I mattered. She spoke to me kindly, remembered my order, and every day, she made me feel human again. That simple kindness kept me coming back and kept me going." Anna's eyes filled with tears. She had thought she was just doing her job, but to him, it meant everything. Daniel continued, "One day, I overheard her talking to a coworker about her dreams. She wanted to start her own bakery one day, but didn't have the means. That's when I decided if I ever found my footing again, I would make sure she got her chance. Tonight is that moment." Gasps filled the room as Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to Anna. With trembling hands, she opened it and saw documents. Ownership papers for a small bakery in the heart of the city. "This is yours," Daniel said firmly. "Not charity. A partnership. Because the world needs more people like you in it." Anna covered her mouth, overwhelmed. She had spent years thinking she was invisible, yet here she was, being celebrated in front of the most powerful people in the city. But Daniel wasn't done. He stepped closer, his voice steady. "And one more thing. Anna, I don't just want to be your business partner. I want to be the man by your side, always." A wave of murmurs spread across the room. Anna's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know whether to cry, laugh, or run. Her life had just changed forever. But the biggest decision of her life was now in front of her. Anna stood frozen. The grand hall felt too small for the emotions rushing through her. The richest man in the room had just asked her to share not only a business but his life. She looked at the papers in her hand, then at Daniel's hopeful eyes. Memories of sleepless nights, rude customers, and endless worry about rent flashed through her mind. She remembered the insults, the whispers, the pitying looks from those who thought she would never rise above her tray of coffee cups, and yet, here she was. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Daniel, yes. Yes, I'll stand by your side." The room erupted into applause. Some faces looked shocked, others smiled warmly. Anna's tears spilled freely as Daniel pulled her into an embrace. For the rest of the evening, she sat beside him at the head table, the very seat she had once served from the side. People approached her with respect now, offering congratulations, asking about her bakery plans. The same women who had mocked her earlier now tried to hide their embarrassment. As the night went on, Anna realized something important. Yes, Daniel had given her an incredible opportunity. Yes, she was now a partner and soon-to-be wife to a man who could have chosen anyone. But the truth was, she had earned this moment, not with wealth or status, but with the one thing no one could take from her: kindness. When the event ended, Daniel whispered, "This is only the beginning." And Anna believed him. The bakery opened months later, buzzing with customers from day one. On the counter sat a small, framed sign: "Kindness is never wasted." Anna made sure every employee knew that their job wasn't just to serve coffee or bread. It was to serve hope, the same way she had once unknowingly served it to Daniel. Years later, whenever someone asked how she went from being a poor waitress to sitting at the CEO's table, Anna would smile and say, "By treating people like they matter, because they do." No act of kindness is too small. You never know whose life you're touching or how deeply you're making a difference. Respect everyone, because the person you least expect could one day change your life forever. Do well to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. See you in our next video.